I think we both know what men are like.
A lot of people who've seen that movie regard it as the culmination of what cinema can be in terms of beauty and depth at the same time. It has people discussing it 30 years still. They discuss it, thinking along the lines of philosophy and art and computer sciences and religion and whatever it is that you can possibly think about. It's there. Or even evolution. Are you a Darwinist? You know, are you a creationist? You know, which side of the fence are you on? People will speculate it and discuss the meaning of that movie forever. And that is its total strength and its uniqueness and why it was totally groundbreaking.
A space film had never been made like that, and he wanted it to be his one, to be the ultimate space story, and it still is to an extent, I think, and people still view it like that. It's still a very popular film.
Because up until that point, as I remember, science fiction films were very much science fiction. It was films like Quatermass Experiment. There was always bug-eyed monsters in it somewhere. The bug-eyed monster movies were very much how they were, because people didn't know what to expect. It was all Martians and little green men with antennae, and that's what they thought it was about. This was a very, very serious attempt to say, okay, what is space travel really going to be like? But and try to get the surface of the moon right, try and imagine what it's like to go through the thick atmosphere of Jupiter. What is on the other side of our known universe?
We had no idea what the Earth would look like from the moon. We had some satellite pictures, but they were not the same. And we had no idea what the moon's surface would look like.
All the reference that you could have possibly have got, the photographic reference, and even ideas of galaxies they might look like, all that reference was collected for the film, and a lot of it was in the art department. We had books and books and books and books of ideas and what things should look like and might look like and what would look good.
Oh, we had all sorts of input. I mean, I worked with IBM, for example, for 3 months from New Jersey, is where their headquarters is, on all the revolving space station, the centrifuge, how did the life support system, the hibernation system, how would that actually function? And they were very helpful in that.
Astronomers were involved. I tell you, everybody. As I said, people from NASA were over. So all the technically, the interiors of the spaceships were all a possibility, because the people that were involved in NASA were designing inside space capsules and so on, were, or one or two anyway, people worked on the film and were involved, and reproducing the ideas of food dispensers, how you would sleep, the hibernaculums, all that sort of thing.
So this is how everything became extremely accurate, projected into the future. And that's why the film is still very much apropos. And it will be, a classic. And at the moment, the technology is still correct.
I always believe that whatever the mind can invent can become a possibility, as has been shown in the recent past with space travel and all. And Stanley picked up on that, and he made the best use of it, and just went ahead saying to himself and the rest of the world, this is what I'm making, this is what it's going to look like in the future, and he fully believed in it.
And as a matter of fact, my Orion virtually became Concorde later on. Very, very strange. The same aerodynamic, but you can split it apart like a rocket engine that could return, and the other piece goes to the moon station, the Earth station. So, but that was all terribly exciting and great fun.
Everybody was astonished because they landed on the moon, I think, the next year. And it was virtually the same. I mean, they got it really right, which was a good indication of how much research they had done, really, and how very particular he was about accuracy.
We were pretty correct. The only thing was the Earth from the moon had very little cloud formations. Of course, that was wrong. And that you see in the film. It's all beautiful blue and green, but no clouds.
And now when people talk about the technical innovations that movie came forward, he was very much a person for, you don't ever tell him you can't do this, because he'll always find a way of doing it.
You'd pick up on all the things that have been said and think, well, can't we make this work? We can make this work, because I know about that and that and that and that, and that, put all these together, we can make it work.
Gadgets are good. He likes gadgets.
He loved toys, he loved knickknacks, things that you could, new little inventions.
Oh, you love it. I mean, like I said, he would come to my room at least once a day. And he would stop at the door and he had another camera. Hey!
And the slicker and the more beautifully designed, the better he liked them.
He bought me a little camera, actually, towards the end of the film.
Yeah,
You would say, look at this, isn't that great? Isn't this beautifully designed? Look what it does, and it's so, you can hardly hear it slide the thing back, and look at this, isn't that fantastic? And it does this and this.
3D cameras with 3 lenses and all, you name it. Next day you had another one.
So he liked gadgets, and he liked technology, and he liked beautifully made things that worked.
His innovations, like front projection screen material, 3M, which is reflective, that had never been used on a set. So there was this great big wall behind the Dawn of Man sequence.
The close rocks near the creatures where it was built, and it was plaster, built out of plaster sheet to look like rock.
He wanted to project slides that he had gotten from Africa of landscapes onto that material for the background. So it was all put on in strips like wallpaper. Didn't work. We could see the little, very faint seams. Television, it probably would have said, oh, forget it, it's too expensive. No, off. Do it again. Let's try a different method. Patches. Can overlap. But irregular, just virtually torn patches about this size. That worked perfectly.
So you had your camera, and you had an angled mirror and a projector. The projector projected the image of the photograph through the set onto the front projection material, which was a screen. So the two married up when they were focused together. They looked as though they were all part of the same thing.
Visual effects, which he did, although Wally Weavers was the director of visual effects, but Stanley did them all, and he got an Oscar for that. The whole thing revolved, but he stayed on the bottom. But the camera was fixed to the floor. So the camera moved with a centrifuge. So you see it from the camera point of view that he's walking away. Now that was his innovation, again. Simple, and it worked. The other one is how do you hang an astronaut to simulate free floating in space in a vacuum. So Stanley's idea was again dead simple. You have a mattress on the stage floor, you have a camera over you, and you shoot everything up. So the wires the astronauts are hanging off, their bodies always cover them. They had three fixings, out on the side and the front and the back, depends on them. Sometimes coming towards you, so it was then between their legs, but you could never see the wires because it's impossible. The body always covered it. And then when you see it, it may be, in the film you see him coming floating towards you. But actually what it was being lowered. See?
Stanley experimented with so many different visual effects to get what he wanted.
The Stargate sequence, as people refer to it now, was not computer graphics. There was no such thing. This was a camera in a dark room with people dropping paint into solvent. That's what that was. And doing it many, many times. Oh, it's pretty, let's do that one, And just going and seeing what would happen. And if it spread in an interesting way, they used that.
Computers were only used in those days for the mechanical motion of the cameras tracking past spaceship models and so on. On these worm screw things, this is motion control, which was everything steady, and a camera would be on like a worm screw, and would go along. That would turn. The camera would just pan. If this were the spaceship, the camera would pan, photographing all the time, so many frames every second or so, past the spaceship very, 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 very slowly. So you had those shots of the beginning of a spaceship in the one side of the frame of the screen, and suddenly the spaceship would go on, and you think, no, it can't be any bigger, and it gets bigger and longer and bigger and bigger. And this was motion control, shot motion control. All very accurate. Which took hours and hours and hours to do one shot.
So all the star backing for all the exterior shots was done in one batch. And then you would have to introduce the astronauts floating past as a pan or coming towards you and all this, and some of the models, introduce them into star backing. But what happened that, yes, you could do that, but stars would show through the image of the astronauts and through the image of the models. So that had to go away, and it was moving. So he had about 30 or 40 young students in totally darkened rooms under projectors, painting out the stars, every frame.
Occasionally I used to sneak into rushes and have a look at previous days' shooting. Well, as you know, rushes are all a bit disjointed. You never quite know which part of the film they're shooting, at any particular time. But it all looked very, very, very good. But if there was a slight tremor on one of the spaceships, or the camera moved just fractionally, Stanley would pick it up on the large screen, and that would have to be photographed again. Not a murmur. It had to be rock steady.
Well, Stanley, like I said, is an absolute perfectionist. And he taught me, of course, by that way, an awful lot. Just a basic concept of being, why not do it right to begin with?
It's just as easy to do it well as it is to do it badly.
It doesn't cost that much more. Instead of slapping it on, and then it falls apart.
That'll do was not in his makeup. That was not a sentence that you would hear him say.
That you don't just put a piece of silver paper on the wall and consider that a computer. It has to be brushed steel, and because he wants to be able to get close, right up to the wall, and push that one button.
He wasn't obsessive, really. in the sort of crazy sense of the word. He wanted it to be the best that he could make it, and he wanted everybody else around him to be the best that they could be as well.
I carried that with me all through the others.
When I worked on a film at Pinewood, Richard Donner was just about to start the first Superman movie, and he showed 2001 to his crew and said, okay, this is what we have to live up to. This is the quality I am after. And that was 20 years later. You could never separate that music from that movie now. You couldn't possibly put any other music to it. It's you know, it's like peaches and cream, you know, they have to go together. And I don't think that anybody was used to seeing classical music used in that way, or to such effect. And it was very specifically chosen. I mean, the beginning piece, the opening to Thus Spake Zarathustra, it was actually about the creation and the dawn of man and goodness knows what else, so it couldn't have been more appropriate.
How he chose the music, which is brilliant, you know? And he did it all himself. We went to several parties at his house up in Elstree. There was always a musical director. Do you have any idea what he's after? Is it electronic? Is it what? I said, I haven't got a clue. I mean, I'm sure Stanley has something in mind, and I'm not involved in that at all. You know? So I really can't be of any help at all. So next party there was somebody else who did.
Stanley, he's the Philharmonic Orchestra. I mean, he had music made, he had musicians composing, and didn't like that, threw that out, had another one done.
So he would go through, which is a very clever way, process of elimination, get ideas from all over the place, and eliminate the ones that he knows he's not going to accept. You know? And but then he would buy thousands and thousands of records, hi-fi records, and he would have new equipment, spend a fortune on the latest hi-fi equipment.
Stanley did love a waltz. He just thought that they were great.
Oh yes, there was a lot of publicity surrounding it before it actually showed. A lot of publicity. I mean, worldwide. And its first showing, a story goes, and I'm sure it's absolutely right. Oh, I do know it to be right because I met one of the chaps that was involved. He wanted all the cinemas that it was going to be showed at or premiered in around the world, like first night showings. He wanted the projectors that were actually going to show this film to be perfectly in focus, the lighting in them, in the camera, in the projectors to be absolutely spot on. The cinema screens had to be absolutely perfect, without a blemish on them, all changed, new screens, for the very first showing. This was all around the world, and he sent teams of people to all these cinemas around the world to check that everything was going to be all right before this film was shown in that particular cinema. So that flew them all around the world.
When it came out, we went to America for the premiere, and that was a very big deal because we went by boat, and Stanley was still editing the movie on the boat. He had a cabin, and with an editor, Steenbeck in there, and the editor came along, and he was working, and he was really fine-tuning it right until the last minute.
And the first premiere in New York did not go well. People walked out. You know. They were all a bunch of society drunks, expected something like the War of the Worlds, and didn't want to think. Mm-hmm.
My own reaction was sitting in the very front seat, in the front row, in the middle of this humongous cinema with the big white screen, was oh, this is what he's been doing. And that I was completely blown away by it, that it was the most fantastic, the most luxurious, the most extraordinary thing that I had ever seen, ever. And I couldn't understand why people didn't like it. I couldn't understand why people thought it was too long. And I couldn't understand why people didn't understand it.
The next day, it was in Washington. A totally different public, you know. And it was a raving success from then on.
I did think at the time that older people, that their minds were too closed to it. They were not used to seeing anything like this. Well, nobody was. And that younger people really took to it, were really blown away by it, and were receptive to what it had to say and its message and the visual beauty of it.
We took some friends to one performance in London where they had the Cinema's thing. And we were sitting fairly close to the front. You know? And we realized the first 10 rows, all these people sitting way back in their chairs. You could see smoke coming up. Especially when the flyover, you know, the Stargate, you know, beautifully done. And they just went on a trip. You know? And they would go every day to this performance. Oh, Stanley could care less.
Out of all the films that I've been on, I would say that this is the one that I still have recurring dreams about.
There may be other people who are as dedicated as he was in the future, and there probably are now, and who will have his vision. But he did what he did, and he's left his mark, and he's made a huge, huge impact on the direction in which cinema has gone, I think. And I think that's a really wonderful legacy to have left behind.